The vastness of space had always made the Validian Empire feel invincible. For 10,000 years, they had expanded across the galaxy, bringing hundreds of species under their control. None had ever successfully resisted. Admiral Jorek stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion *, his gray skin reflecting the blue glow of Earth on the main view screen. He studied the small blue planet with six-fingered hands clasped behind his back. Such a primitive world, he said to no one in particular. Yet our scans show they have achieved space travel and colonized their moon and the Red Planet. Captain Lyra approached with a data tablet. The Supreme Council has reviewed our findings, Admiral. They believe these humans will make excellent servants once properly subjugated. Jorek nodded. The pattern was always the same. Discover a new species, offer them the protection of the Empire, and when they inevitably fail to meet impossible demands, conquer them. The Validians had perfected this approach over millennia. Prepare the diplomatic vessel, Jorek ordered. Ambassador Dorn will deliver our terms as usual. 3 days later, Ambassador Dorn's sleek silver craft descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing on a specially prepared platform outside the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. Human security forces surrounded the landing zone, their primitive weapons ready but not aimed directly at the ship. Dorn emerged, his tall, slender form towering over the human representatives. His translator implant processed their simple language easily. People of Earth, Dorn began, his voice smooth and practiced. I bring greetings from the Galactic Empire. We have watched your development with great interest. Your species has shown remarkable progress in a short time. President Myers stepped forward, a woman of medium height with short gray hair and steady eyes. We welcome you to Earth, Ambassador. We're eager to establish peaceful relations with your people. Dorn smiled, revealing 2 sharp teeth. The Empire offers you protection and guidance. Your world will become a client state. You will provide resources and soldiers. In return, we will share some of our knowledge and ensure your safety. The human delegation exchanged glances. Their body language suggested discomfort, something Dorn had seen countless times before. That's a generous offer, President Myers said carefully. However, Earth would prefer to enter into an equal partnership. We have much to offer through trade and cultural exchange. Dorn's smile vanished. No species had ever countered the Empire's initial offer. They typically accepted quickly, grateful for any scraps from the Imperial table. Perhaps I have not made myself clear, Dorn said coldly. This is not a negotiation. The Empire does not form partnerships with developing worlds. You will join as a subject planet or face the consequences. A tall human male stepped forward, General Reed of Earth's unified military forces. Ambassador, with respect, humanity has never responded well to threats. We extend our hand in friendship, but we will not be bullied. Dorn's facial ridges darkened with anger. You have 3 of your Earth days to reconsider. The consequences of refusal would be severe. Without waiting for a response, he turned and re-entered his ship. Back on the Dominion *, Dorn reported to Admiral Jorek. The humans have refused our terms. They speak of equal partnership as if they were our peers. Jorek laughed, a harsh sound. How amusing. Prepare a battle group. We'll destroy one of their Mars colonies as a demonstration. These humans must learn their place in the galaxy. As battle cruisers deployed from the Imperial fleet, no one noticed the small Earth vessels tracking their movements. No one intercepted the transmissions being sent back to Earth. The Validians had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never fought humans before. And that would be their first mistake. The Martian colony of New Hope vanished in a flash of light. One moment it housed 3,000 human settlers working the mineral plains. The next, it was nothing but a scorched crater in the red soil. From the bridge of the Dominion *, Admiral Jorek watched with detached interest as the colony disintegrated under concentrated plasma fire. Message sent, he said simply. Captain Lyra, open a broadcast channel to Earth. Let's see if they understand our language now. On Earth, emergency sirens wailed across every city. Screens in homes, offices, and public spaces switched to an emergency broadcast showing the destruction of New Hope. Families of the colonists collapsed in grief while military officials rushed to secure facilities worldwide. In the underground command center beneath Geneva, President Myers stared at the footage, her face ashen. 3,000 people, she whispered. They murdered 3,000 civilians without warning. General Reeb stood rigidly at her side. This is their pattern, Madam President. Our intelligence suggests they've done this hundreds of times across the galaxy. They expect us to surrender immediately. The emergency council room fell silent as a new transmission cut into their feed. Admiral Jorex's alien face filled the main screen, his expression cold and superior. People of Earth, he began, you have witnessed the might of the Galactic Empire. This demonstration was necessary due to your regrettable stubbornness. More colonies will follow until you accept your proper place in our order. You have 6 hours to surrender unconditionally. The transmission cut off abruptly. For several moments, no one spoke. Then an older man in a simple uniform stood up from the far end of the table. This was Colonel James, head of Special Operations, a legendary figure who had helped unite Earth's formerly warring nations. We can't fight them conventionally, James said, his voice calm despite the circumstances. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. But humans have something the Empire has never encountered. What's that? Asked Defense Minister Wang. A smile crossed the colonel's weathered face. A very long history of fighting against superior forces. Guerrilla warfare is in our blood. Over the next 5 hours, a plan formed. It was desperate and dangerous. But as Colonel James reminded them, throughout human history, empires have fallen not to equal powers, but to those they underestimated. At the 5-hour mark, President Myers stood before a global audience and delivered a message that was also transmitted to the Imperial fleet. In light of the Empire's overwhelming power, Earth has no choice but to accept the Validian terms, she announced, her voice heavy with apparent defeat. We ask only that no more innocent lives be taken. We will comply with all Imperial demands. Admiral Jorex received the message with smug satisfaction. Prepare landing parties, he ordered. We'll begin the formal occupation immediately. Have resources teams ready to catalog this world's assets. The Imperial fleet began to move closer to Earth, spreading out to cover major population centers. 5 massive troop carriers descended through the atmosphere, heading toward designated landing zones, where human representatives supposedly waited to formalize surrender. Nobody on the Imperial ships noticed the small, stealthy vessels detaching from the shadowed sides of satellites and space debris. Nobody detected the unusual energy signatures building within Earth's supposedly primitive defense systems. As the first Imperial troop carrier touched down outside New York, a delegation of humans approached with white flags. Captain Merck, leading the occupation force, stepped out with 20 guards, confident in their superior weaponry and armor. We accept your surrender, Merck announced through his translator. The transition to Imperial rule begins now. The human delegation leader, a woman in formal attire, nodded respectfully. We understand, Captain. But there's something you should know about humans. And what is that? Merck asked dismissively. Her eyes hardened. We never surrender. We just regroup. At that moment, across the globe, the trap was sprung. Captain Merck had only a second to process the human's words before the ground beneath the Imperial landing craft trembled. Not from fear, but from perfectly timed explosions that had been planted days before. The surrendering humans dropped to the ground as hidden panels in the surrounding buildings slid open. From these openings, compact missile launchers emerged, locking onto Imperial signatures. Ambush. Merck shouted into his communicator, raising his weapon. But it was too late. The missiles weren't designed to destroy the Imperial ships directly. That would have been impossible with Earth's technology. Instead, they carried specialized electromagnetic pulses calibrated to the exact frequency of Validian shield generators. knowledge gained from years of secretly studying crashed Imperial scout ships that the Empire never knew were missing. Across the globe, the scene repeated itself at every landing site. Imperial ships suddenly found their shields failing, their systems flickering as the carefully engineered pulses washed over them. In space, Admiral Jorex watched in disbelief as communication with his ground forces abruptly ceased. "What's happening? Restore contact immediately." "Sir," called a sensor operator, panic in her voice. Multiple small craft approaching from all vectors. The tactical display showed dozens, then hundreds, of small human vessels emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. They had been concealed in asteroid shadows, hidden in debris fields, and powered down in the dark craters of Earth's moon. "Impossible," Jorex whispered. "Their technology can't." His words were cut short as the first wave of human attacks hit the Imperial fleet. The ships were small and primitive by Validian standards, but they moved with unexpected speed and coordination. Each one targeted specific vulnerabilities that should have been unknown to such a primitive species. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Commander Davis watched her tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Focus fire on their communication arrays and engine systems," she ordered. "Remember your training. Don't try to destroy them. Just disable and move on." The human vessels darted between the much larger Imperial ships like insects swarming giants. Their weapons weren't powerful enough to breach the main hulls, but they didn't need to be. Each attack was precisely targeted at external sensors, weapon ports, and the now vulnerable shield generators. Back on Earth, the ground battles had already ended. Imperial troops, expecting a simple occupation ceremony, found themselves surrounded by hidden human forces, armed with weapons specifically designed to penetrate their armor at close range. Captain Merck, bleeding from a wound in his side, was dragged before the woman who had spoken to him moments earlier. "How?" he demanded. "How did primitives like you prepare all this?" She knelt to look him in the eyes. "You're not the first Empire humans have faced, Captain. Just the first from the stars. We've been fighting against superior forces since we picked up our first stones." In orbit, Admiral Jorex's flagship rocked with another impact. Half his systems were offline, and 3 support vessels had already been disabled. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow with shock. "All vessels, emergency withdrawal to fallback position." "Sir, we still have troops on the surface," his second-in-command protested. Jorex's face hardened. "They are lost. The Empire must know what we face here." As the Imperial ships struggled to engage their damaged engines, human vessels continued their harassment, ensuring the retreat was as costly and humiliating as possible. On the command deck of Earth's orbital defense station, General Reed and Colonel James watched the Imperial fleet limp away. "They'll be back," James said quietly, "and in much greater numbers." Reed nodded. "Of course they will. Empires always do. That's why we're already implementing Phase 2. Will it be enough?" a junior officer asked nervously. Reed's expression was grim but determined. "It has to be. But remember, we've just done what no species has managed in 10,000 years. We've bloodied the Empire's nose and shown them that humans don't follow their rules of war." As the last Imperial ship disappeared from sensor range, a cheer went up among the station crew. But the leaders didn't join in. They knew this wasn't a victory, just the opening move in a much larger game. And now, humanity had the Empire's attention. The Grand Imperial Palace on Validia Prime hadn't seen such chaos in 10 millennia. High commanders rushed through its crystal halls, while communication officers struggled to manage the flood of incoming reports. In the central war chamber, Emperor Xorlak himself sat on his obsidian throne, listening as Admiral Jorex finished his humiliating report. "The humans were prepared for us," Jorex concluded, his head bowed low. "They knew our weaknesses. They had studied us. Somehow, they acquired our technology without our knowledge." The Emperor's 6 eyes narrowed to slits. "You lost a fleet to primitives. Not lost. Your magnificence. Damage. We can rebuild and return with. Silence. The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. He turned to his most feared military leader. Grand Marshal Krell, what do you make of this? Krell stepped forward, his battle-scarred face betraying no emotion. The humans have accomplished what no other species has attempted in our history. They deceived us. They studied us while we studied them. They turned our arrogance against us. And your recommendation? The Emperor asked. We must respond with overwhelming force, Krell said. But first, we must make an example of those who would follow their path. 3 days later, the peaceful Arcanid civilization watched in horror as Imperial warships descended upon their homeworld. Their crime, providing sanctuary to human scientists years earlier. Let this be a lesson. Grand Marshal Krell's message boomed across thousands of worlds simultaneously. Those who aid the human rebellion will face the Empire's full might. The humans have 3 standard cycles to surrender before we return to their world with the Purification Fleet. On Earth, military leaders gathered in the deep underground facility known as Haven 1. The chamber was silent as they watched footage of the Arcanid punishment. They destroyed an entire civilization to send us a message, President Myers said quietly. General Reed nodded grimly. And they'll do the same to us if we don't prepare. Our first victory bought us time, nothing more. Colonel James activated the central holographic display. We've analyzed the captured Imperial technology. Their strength is their unified command structure. It allows them to coordinate massive fleets with perfect precision. But it's also their weakness. The display showed a schematic of Imperial communication systems. Their entire military operates on variations of a single encrypted protocol. We've already begun developing ways to disrupt it. Across the solar system, humanity prepared. Mining operations on asteroids worked around the clock to produce materials for the coming battle. Mars colonies, rebuilt under heavy protection, became manufacturing centers for new weapons designed specifically to target Imperial weaknesses. Meanwhile, human intelligence agents who had infiltrated Imperial territory years before, posing as members of compliant species, began their most dangerous missions. Some sabotaged supply depots. Others planted misinformation in Imperial databases. A few brave operatives even made contact with other subjugated species, whispering of Earth's resistance and finding unexpected allies. On a remote trading outpost in the Centauri sector, one such agent, Agent Foster, met with representatives from 5 different species in a darkened storage bay. The Validians have ruled through fear for too long, Foster explained. Earth stands against them now, but we can't do it alone. A reptilian Drax trader leaned forward. You actually damaged an Imperial fleet. Most consider that impossible. Nothing is impossible, Foster replied. The Empire has grown complacent. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy who refuses to follow their rules. A blue-skinned Meridian shook her head. My people were the 3rd conquest of the Empire, 10,000 years ago. We've tried rebellions. They always end the same way. But never with human allies, Foster countered. We've studied your past rebellions. We won't make the same mistakes. As the meeting concluded, representatives from 3 species had pledged support. Not with warships, they had none, but with information, sabotage, and safe harbors for human operations. Back on Earth, as the deadline approached, General Reed reviewed the final preparations with his staff. The Empire expects us to either surrender or fight conventionally, he said. We'll do neither. When they arrive, they'll find that humans wrote the book on asymmetric warfare. He pointed to the map of the solar system, now dotted with thousands of small defensive positions, hidden bases, and trap zones. We can't match their firepower, he concluded. So we'll make them fight coasts. The Imperial Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, over 500 warships arranged in the traditional Validian battle sphere. At its center, the massive dreadnought Asterisk, Eternal Glory Asterisk, carried Grand Marshal Krell and 30,000 elite troops. Scanned the system, Krell ordered from his command throne. "Find their defensive positions." The sensor officer worked frantically at his console. "Marshal, I'm detecting scattered human forces throughout the system, but their deployments make no tactical sense. They're spread too thin to offer effective resistance." Krell's eyes narrowed. The humans are playing games. Deploy according to standard conquest protocol. Begin with their orbital defenses. The Armada split into 3 attack groups, moving toward Earth with mechanical precision. As they approached, they encountered only minimal resistance, a few small defense platforms that were quickly obliterated. "This is disappointing," Krell remarked. Perhaps they exhausted their tricks during the first encounter. His tactical officer suddenly straightened. "Marshal, multiple new contacts appearing. All around the Armada, hundreds of small human vessels seemed to materialize from nowhere. They had been hiding in sensor-proof containers disguised as debris, powered down completely until the perfect moment." "Fire at will," Krell commanded. Imperial weapons blazed across space, but the human ships moved with shocking agility, following no discernible pattern. Traditional Validian doctrine called for eliminating the enemy command ships first, but the humans had no apparent command structure to target. On one of the human vessels, the Defiance Asterisk, Captain Miller watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Unlike the Imperial ships, each human captain operated independently, following mission parameters rather than direct orders. "Squadron Blue, initiate Operation Mosquito," she ordered. "Squadron Red, draw their fire toward the Jupiter gravity well." Across the solar system, similar commands were being issued by dozens of captains, each controlling their own small battle group. There was no central command to disrupt, no flagship to target, just hundreds of independent units with shared objectives. The Imperial fleet struggled to adapt. Their training had prepared them for enemies who fought like they did, with rigid hierarchies and coordinated movements. "They're not fighting properly," exclaimed an Imperial commander as his cruiser rocked from another precision strike. The human vessels continued their harassment, using the solar system itself as a weapon. They lured Imperial ships into asteroid fields, used planetary rings for cover, and even detonated hidden charges in the paths of pursuing vessels. On the Eternal Glory Asterisk, Krell watched in growing frustration as his perfect battle sphere fragmented into dozens of smaller engagements scattered across the system. "Enough of this," he growled. "Prepare the purification beam. We'll start with their moon base." As the Dreadnought's main weapon began charging, 5 human ships suddenly accelerated directly toward it in what appeared to be a suicide run. "Ignore them," Krell ordered. "They can't penetrate our shields." But the human ships weren't trying to attack with conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed a new device developed from captured Imperial technology, a shield harmonic disruptor. At the same time, from the dark side of Earth's moon, a hidden mass driver fired a specially designed projectile. The timing was precise. As the disruptor created a momentary gap in the Dreadnought's shields, the projectile, little more than a titanium rod, accelerated to incredible speed, struck the charging weapon port. The resulting explosion ripped through 3 decks of the Eternal Glory Asterisk. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as warning klaxons blared. "Damage report," Krell demanded. "Main weapon disabled. Multiple hull breaches. Shields at 40%. Before Krell could respond, another officer called out in panic. "Marshal, boarding craft approaching. They're using our shield disruption tow." The transmission cut off as the first human boarding team breached the Dreadnought's hull. Led by Colonel James himself, the elite soldiers moved through the Imperial vessel with practiced precision. "Remember your training," James told his team as they advanced toward the bridge. "Their armor is strongest in the front. Aim for joint sections and sensor arrays." Across the solar system, other Imperial vessels found themselves in similar situations, fighting an enemy that refused to follow the established rules of space warfare. As Krell organized his bridge defense, he finally understood what made humans different from all the species the Empire had conquered before. Humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to win wars. The news spread across the Galactic Empire like wildfire. At first, Imperial censors tried to contain it, but the truth was too explosive to suppress. Grand Marshal Krell had been captured by humans. The asterisk Eternal Glory asterisk, pride of the Imperial fleet, was now in human hands. On the conquered world of Nivar, a group of scaled natives gathered in an underground chamber, whispering excitedly. "Is it true?" asked one. "Have these humans really defeated Krell?" An elder nodded slowly. "My sources confirm it. Not only defeated, they captured him alive. No species has ever dealt such a blow to the Empire." "Then perhaps it is time," said another, pulling out a hidden weapon. "If humans can fight back, so can we." Similar conversations occurred on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for thousands of years suddenly saw the possibility of freedom. What began as whispers grew into open rebellion. On the Imperial homeworld, Emperor Xorlak faced his first genuine crisis in 3 millennia of rule. How could this happen? He demanded, addressing what remained of his high command. One primitive species defies us, and suddenly the Empire teeters on the edge of collapse. Admiral Torval, newly appointed after Jorex's execution for failure, stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Magnificence, the humans have inspired the subject worlds. We've lost contact with governors in 7 sectors. Our forces are stretched too thin. Then recall the Armada from Sol. Crush these humans once and for all." An older Validian counselor named Mex, who rarely spoke at such meetings, cleared his throat. "If I may, Emperor, the Armada cannot be recalled because it no longer exists as an effective fighting force. The battle reports indicate that nearly 60% of our ships have been destroyed or captured." Stunned silence filled the chamber. "Impossible," the Emperor whispered. "The humans," Mex continued, "have accomplished something unprecedented. They've proven the Empire is not invincible. And now that the idea exists, it cannot be unthought." In the Sol system, the captured asterisk Eternal Glory asterisk had been converted into humanity's new command center. President Myers and the military leadership gathered on the former bridge, where Grand Marshal Krell sat under guard. "Your empire is beginning to crumble," Marshal Myers said, showing him reports from across the galaxy. "Other species are rising up against Validian rule." Krell's face remained impassive. "Temporary setbacks. The Empire has stood for 10,000 years. It will crush these rebellions as it has crushed all others." General Reed shook his head. "You still don't understand what's happening, do you? The Empire has never faced an enemy like humanity. We don't just fight wars. We end them." "And what does that mean?" Krell asked with disdain. "It means we're offering you a choice," Myers replied. "Continue this war and watch your empire tear itself apart, or negotiate." Krell laughed harshly. "The Empire does not negotiate with inferiors." "Then perhaps it's time for new leadership," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a junior Imperial officer being escorted onto the bridge. This was Commander Lin, captured during the battle, but now walking freely. "This is treason," Krell growled. Lin stood tall despite her fear. "No, Marshal. This is survival. I represent a growing faction within the Empire who believe our conquest days must end. The humans have shown us the fatal flaw in our ideology." "And what flaw is that?" Krell demanded. "That subjugation creates enemies, not allies," Lin replied. "Look at the humans. They fight not just for themselves, but for all oppressed species. They share their technology and tactics freely with others. While we rule through fear, they build through cooperation." Myers studied the young Validian with interest. "Are there many who think as you do?" "More than the Emperor knows," Lin confirmed. "Many of us have long questioned our methods, but fear kept us silent. Now, with the Empire weakened, reformers are speaking openly in the Imperial Senate. On a dozen liberated worlds, human advisors worked alongside native resistance fighters, teaching them the guerrilla tactics that had proven so effective against Imperial forces. Earth ships, now augmented with reverse-engineered Imperial technology, ran blockades to deliver supplies and weapons. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Xorlak received even more disturbing news. "The rebels have taken the Centauri sector," a messenger reported, "and they're being led by Commander Lin, broadcasting from what appears to be the captured Eternal Glory *." The Emperor's face darkened. "This cannot stand. Prepare my personal guard. We will crush these traitors ourselves." But as he gave the order, the palace lights flickered ominously. The empire that had stood unchallenged for 10 millennia was beginning to fall, not just from external attacks, but from within. And it had all begun with a simple warning: never underestimate humans. The neutral planet of Terra hosted the most significant gathering in galactic history. Once a minor trading outpost, it now served as the meeting ground where the fate of thousands of worlds would be decided. In the central dome, representatives from over 100 species sat in concentric circles. At one table sat the human delegation, President Myers, General Reed, and Colonel James. At another, the Imperial representatives, not Emperor Xorlak, who had refused to attend, but Commander Lin and several reform-minded Validian nobles. "This peace conference would have been unimaginable 3 months ago," said Arbiter Cole, a member of the ancient Jordian race, chosen to mediate due to their reputation for neutrality. "We stand at a turning point for our galaxy." President Myers stepped forward to address the gathering. "Humanity did not seek this war. We asked only for independence and equal standing. The Empire's response was to attack us, but what happened next surprised everyone, including ourselves." The room remained silent, all eyes fixed on the human leader. "We discovered we weren't fighting alone. Every species subjugated by the Empire became our ally. Together, we've proven that even the oldest tyranny can be overcome." Commander Lin rose next. Many Validians still considered her a traitor, but to reformers, she represented hope for a different future. "For 10,000 years, my people believed conquest was our right," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "We were wrong. The humans taught us something the Empire had forgotten. True strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation." As the formal negotiations began, Grand Marshal Krell watched from a secure viewing area. Still a prisoner, he had been brought to witness the dismantling of everything he had served. "How can you betray the Empire like this?" he asked his guard, Colonel James. James considered the question carefully. "We're not destroying your civilization, Marshal. We're helping it evolve. Even now, with all that's happened, we don't want Validians as enemies. We want you as partners." "Impossible," Krell scoffed. "Our peoples are too different." "Are we?" James showed him footage of human and Validian medical teams working together to treat wounded from both sides. "Your people are learning what we've known throughout our history. Former enemies often make the strongest allies." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the last Imperial hardliners plotted one final desperate attack. Admiral Vox, loyal to Emperor Xorlak, had assembled the remaining Imperial warships for a surprise assault on Terra. "We will eliminate all the rebel leaders in one strike," he told his captains. "The Empire will be restored." But as his fleet prepared to jump to Terra, they discovered another lesson about fighting humans. Never assume they haven't anticipated your move. A joint fleet of human and liberated world ships emerged from hiding, surrounding the Imperial forces. Leading them was the Defiance *, now commanded by Captain Miller. "Imperial vessels, power down your weapons," Miller broadcast. "This war is over. Your leaders are at the peace table. Don't throw your lives away for a dying cause." For a tense moment, it seemed the Imperial captains would fight. Then, one by one, they stood down. Even they could recognize the inevitable. Back on Terra, the peace conference concluded with the signing of the Galactic Concordat. Its terms were revolutionary. The Empire would be disbanded. A new galactic confederation would rise in its place, with each member world having equal representation. Technology would be shared, not hoarded. Defense would be collective, not imposed. As the delegates prepared to depart, General Reed found himself face to face with a young Validian officer who had served under Commander Lin. "I still don't understand," the Validian admitted. "You could have destroyed us. After what we did to your colonies, your people would have supported it. Why offer peace instead?" Reed looked out at the stars visible through Terra's transparent dome. "Because the best victory isn't destroying your enemy," he said quietly. "It's turning them into friends." The Validian considered this. "My instructors at the Imperial Academy taught us that humans were dangerous. They said if we ever encountered your kind, we should either conquer you immediately or run." Reed smiled. They were half right. Humans are dangerous to tyrants and oppressors, but to friends. He extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "To friends, we're the best allies you'll ever have." After a moment's hesitation, the Validian clasped his hand. Across the galaxy, a new era had begun. The empire that had stood for 10 millennia had fallen in less than a year, not just to human weapons, but to human ideas. Freedom, cooperation, equality. And a simple warning echoed among the stars. If you plan to fight humans, be prepared to join them instead, because humans don't just win wars, they win peace.